Greetings, Ventures. This is Lorne, your guild advisor, and welcome back to this week's installment of Cuts and Changes for DanMachi Season 4, where I highlight the differences between the original light novel source and the anime adaptation, in addition to providing you extra context for what you see in the show. With episode 16, we see the idealism of a younger Ryu, and then are brought back to Bell and Ryu's struggle on floor 37, where they must toss away their pride and break taboos to survive in the dungeon. As the expedition party defends Welf, the blacksmith is dead set on forging a weapon that goes beyond normal Crozzo Magic Swords to better protect the party from monsters. There are a lot of extra details to cover in this episode, so without further ado, let's start the breakdown. The episode begins with the anime going back to cover Estrella Familia's conversation about justice, which was skipped in the previous episode. The discussion is kept mostly intact, as it's a scene that reveals the idealistic beliefs Ryu had in her younger days, while it also showcases the lightheartedness of Estrella Familia as a whole. Just a general reminder, Estrella is the goddess of justice, and the phrase, the sword and wings of justice that Ryu mentions is part of what is considered a motto for the Familia. The scene also shows that while the members of Estrella Familia can have slightly different beliefs, Elise is the positive leader that unites them together. Then of course the opening animation plays immediately afterward, giving us a grim reminder of the harsh reality that befell Ryu's comrades. Ryu finally wakes up and uses her healing magic on her leg, but is still not quite in prime condition. Bell mentions that they had an argument about who to heal, and he won by pointing out that having to continually support Ryu would be a burden to him. In the light novel, Ryu actually unwraps the Goliath scarf to take a look at Bell's arm, and she gasps at the sight. Bell did not even want to look at it, mentioning that from the shoulder down, it was just a mess of flesh and bone. For the time being, he could at least move it, but the possibility of needing a fake arm upon reaching the surface entered his mind. The two reviewed their situation, and Ryu states that they should not count on any outside help. Since she can't recognize their location on floor 37, they were somewhere away from the main route, which meant any familias on expeditions would likely not run into them. Plus, it was very unlikely that the expedition party would be able to get to floor 37 without any additional forces. In the light novel, Bell realizes that the only way the expedition party will know that he and Ryu fell from floor 27 will be if Mari, who witnessed the battle against Juggernaut, manages to communicate with the party. Speaking of the expedition crew, they continue their defense of Welf as he forges a new weapon. Oka and Boris are holding shields at the entrance to block the entryway, which makes it easier for the party to focus their attacks, as well as prevent the party from being surrounded. Also, it's nice to see Cassandra healing in this episode. I mentioned this in the previous Cuts and Changes video, but Welf's forge is partly being fueled by the Amphis Buy and Drop item, specifically the liquid bile that powers the monster's flames. This makes the forge so hot that it is managing to actually sear Welf's skin. Not only did Welf have to adjust to a much hotter temperature and having to work with a rare material like pure adamantite, he needed to finish his new weapon in a timely manner. He certainly had his work cut out for him. The episode transitions back to Bell and Ryu, as they make the decision to head to floor 36 to get back into the lower levels, rather than pressing their luck and reaching the safety points on floor 39. Ryu mentions that floor 37 is as wide as the city of Arario, and as a general rule, the deeper you go in the dungeon, the wider the floors. It'll be much easier for Bell and Ryu to deal with the weaker monsters in the lower levels, starting from floor 36, then to navigate huge areas of the dungeon filled with stronger monsters to reach floor 39. Plus, the lower levels also have wild berries and water, which were supplies that both Bell and Ryu desperately needed. Ryu also warns Bell that they should only be using magic if it's to save them from death. Mental strength, which powered their magic, was their lifeline. They had to act conservatively to avoid risking a mine down, like Bell suffered when he overused his firebolt to fend off a pack of skull sheep. I'm very happy that they preserved the dungeon explanations and practices in the anime adaptation, so you can better understand their actions, and it also gives off the feeling that Ryu is acting like a teacher to Bell, drilling valuable information about the dungeon into him. Noting that they have a lack of basic equipment, Ryu makes a decision to break one of the taboos among adventurers, looting the dead. In normal practice, if a deceased adventurer is encountered, you are to bring back the body to the surface, and avoid looting any items, as the act was seen as barbarism. When Ryu starts removing equipment from the female corpse, Bell's about to protest, but he quickly realizes that Ryu was potentially even more disgusted in breaking the taboo than he was. Seeing how much Ryu is willing to compromise her adventurer's pride is what inspires Bell to do the same. Bell and Ryu also find a makeshift map that the deceased party was recording before their death. According to the map, the deceased party ran into a number of dead ends, which turned their journey into a taxing affair. Eventually, the party ran out of a crucial supply, this being the antidotes that Ryu mentions in the anime. In the light novel, Bell actually manages to notice this detail and theorizes the party dying from poison himself. With the aid of the map, Ryu is certain that it will be easier to find the main passage of floor 37, which would allow her to guide them to the connecting passageway into floor 36. The two of them pay their respects to the deceased adventurers and start the retreat from floor 37. Going back to Welf, he's having a lot of difficulty shaping the adamantite in the way he wants. He has had experience in shaping material with a lower concentration of adamantite, Bell's armor in particular, but pure adamantite was a different animal. Even famous high smiths like Tsubaki could have trouble with adamantite from time to time. The anime has Welf remember the words of the Crozzo family to put his soul into his hammer. I have mentioned this in other videos on the channel, but Season 2 skipped a chapter from Volume 8 which specifically deals with Welf's family. I will not be summarizing the whole story and only cover a few key points, but if you're curious, you can check out my Cuts and Changes video which covers Volume 8 of the series. Timestamps are included if you just want to see Welf's portion of the video. A link to the mobile game adaptation of the skipped Volume 8 content can also be found in the description of this video. Welf's father and grandfather snuck into Arario during the Kingdom of Rakia's invasion to recruit Welf to craft Crozzo Magic Swords for the kingdom's army, as the Crozzo family is traditionally an ally of Rakia. Also during this chapter, Tsubaki tells Welf that if he's serious about improving as a smith, he cannot afford to reject his Crozzo blood. Remember that he hates Crozzo Magic Swords because they go against his philosophy, that a weapon should be reliable. A magic sword that broke after a certain amount of use goes against this philosophy. This chapter also reveals that Welf not only respected Hephaestus as a blacksmith and goddess, but that he also loved her romantically. Welf makes a promise to his family, Tsubaki, and Hephaestus that he will surpass Crozzo Magic Swords by creating his own weapons. Finally, he makes an agreement with Hephaestus. If he manages to create something that impresses the goddess of the forge, then she would have to entertain a romantic relationship with him. Welf is really shooting his shot. Welf begins to strike the metal with confidence when he realizes his best work takes shape in the equipment he makes for his friends. This time, what he needed to protect them was a weapon that surpassed traditional magic swords. The anime has a short original scene featuring Hestia and Hephaestus, which honestly would have been a great time to throw in a tease about Hephaestus and Welf's relationship, as it's never been shown in the anime adaptation. However, this scene is mostly used to highlight the Hestia knife, the weapon that Hephaestus crafted for Bell. The divine knife is the inspiration that Welf uses to create his new magic weapon. As Welf works the hot metal, some of his blood is absorbed by the weapon. This is the blood which he inherits from his ancestor, Crozzo, a blacksmith blessed by his spirit, who is also mentioned in the Tale of Argonaut. You can actually see this story in the mobile game, which I will also link in the description. In creating this new magic weapon, Welf not only wanted to catch up to Bell in terms of growth, but he was determined to surpass both Bell and Hephaestus. In the end, he completes crafting his new Welf magic sword, Shiko Kazuki. This is a magic sword that will not break like the standard magic weapon, as it instead uses the user's mental energy to fuel the magic attacks, much like regular magic spells. The power of this magic sword is based on the magic power of the user. The stronger the user, the stronger the weapon, similar to Bell's Hestia knife. This is also why Welf has Cassandra hold on to the weapon, as she has a much larger pool of mental energy due to being a healer. I'm a big fan of the gorgeous shot of Welf and Cassandra holding the sword together, with the flames in the background. It's also in this moment that Cassandra realizes that the last line in the prophecy, "Gather the fragments, consecrate the flame, beseech the sun's light," was referring to this moment. She finds relief that she was able to help guide the party through the prophecy, which saved them from calamity. After all, no one had died. There's also a small little detail where Daphne blushes at Welf in the light novel, when he says that he's ready to give back the lives they put in his hands. I imagine this was omitted because the anime has already been cutting the Welf and Hephaestus moments. It would be odd to keep one and not the other. In any case, the party is now in better shape to continue their journey in locating Bell and Ryu. Overall, this episode's adaptation did a good job of showcasing the conflict in Ryu and Bell, as they had to break taboos to increase their chances of survival in the dungeon. I was also happy to see that they kept a lot of the discussion regarding the deep floors and Ryu's knowledge of the dungeon. I wish the anime did a bit more on Welf's side of the story in terms of referencing his family or acknowledging his promise with Hephaestus, but perhaps the damage was already done in Season 2. Nevertheless, I still enjoyed the reveal of Shiko Kazuki and seeing the power of its flames. In terms of the mobile game, this week's side story once again features Alan and the other Freya Familia members still continuing their search for Bell and Ryu via Seer's request. As always, I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to watch it. And with that, I'll see you next time for episode 17's Cuts and Changes video. If you would like to see more DanMachi content, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to follow me on my socials, and this is Lorne, your guild advisor, signing out.